When you think about correcting an apparently inadvertent bank error, you usually picture a pretty simple transaction thus. Here is my complaint. You've wrongly deducted X amount of money from monies due. Please correct your mistake. I've attached supporting written evidence in accordance with settled law on pensions. Right, like a quick phone call or a brief but detailed email highlighting the error and a proposed resolution. Yeah, exactly. Maybe a few days of review and processing of your claim, and then, the math just clicks into place. We definitely like to believe the system self corrects rather than using accounting sleight of hand to game the system. Oh, absolutely. But today's deep dive is built on the stack of personal letters and banking records that document exactly how a massive system and institution like Punjab National Bank or PNB can, well, quietly refuse to correct itself. It's a really frustrating and heartbreaking situation, especially as it involved a super senior, fast approaching 90 years old. Good innings, you think, until you realize the fast paced bowler on the pitch is bowling bouncers and bodyline. Fast, short pitched balls aimed directly at the batsman's body. A great analogy. Presumably, PNB is the bowler? Okay, we're looking at the 5 year struggle of an 87-year-old retiree. His name is Harjit Singh, and it's this journey that starts with a simple hope for justice and it basically ends with a very quiet resignation. Okay, so let's unpack this. Yes, Harjit's story doesn't end with some fiery courtroom victory. I mean, it ends in sheer exhaustion after 5 years of attrition designed to wear out the retiree. Yes, in total exhaustion. Over 5 years, Shri Harjit Singh sent between, I think it was 25 to 30 emails to the Punjab National Bank's pension department. And he was just met with a complete brick wall of silence, right? Mostly silence, yes. And when PNB finally paid him the commutation difference that was owed, an amount which Singh had correctly calculated at 138,000 rupees, but the bank deposited just 13,000 rupees. That is less than 10%. I mean, what's staggering to me isn't just the math here, it's the actual toll it took on him. For sure, an arbitrary and unlawful deduction of 125,000 rupees will take a toll on anyone. Harjit, after 5 years of repeatedly leading the breach to recover the monies owed to him, writes this incredibly poignant letter to his ally in this fight, Anil Mehta, and he admits the whole ordeal has just broken him from the inside. It's heartbreaking to read. It really is. He says instead of fighting, he chooses his peace. He explicitly states he is deleting all the PNB records from his phone and also from his mind entirely, presumably for his mental well being. Yes, in a fashion, Harjit inadvertently nodded at the poet Henry Wadsworth Longfellow in that letter. Oh, right, the ending quote. Yes, in a fashion, he writes, "Great is the art of beginning, but greater is the art of ending." Wow. It's just this profound kind of surrender, like running a marathon where the officials keep moving the finish line until you just, sit down on the track, thoroughly exhausted and demoralized. Exactly. At what point does justice cost more than your peace of mind or mental well being? And his exhaustion makes perfect sense when you realize how alone he was in this whole process and fight for justice. Because the official unions didn't help much. Right? And Anil Mehta writes back to Harjit, basically saluting his solitary perseverance because the official bank retiree associations, the very groups meant to advocate for these individuals, they completely abandoned the fight. Which is shocking because this isn't just a niche issue affecting one single person. This impacts over 7,000 retirees from PNB alone. A huge group. Yes, and we know there's massive public resonance here. I mean, a previous broadcast about Harjit's exact struggle by YouTube channel TheBloggerian pulled in some 55,000 views. Clear evidence that people care about this issue. They really do. But I just have to ask, why is the justice system built like this? I mean, shouldn't the Supreme Court have an automatic compliance audit or something to ensure its rulings are adhered to by all parties? You would think so. Right? Why does an 87-year-old have to single-handedly enforce a Supreme Court of India rulings? Well, that's the glaring legal loophole left behind here. The courts make a ruling, but the actual enforcement falls on the exhausted individual. It's ridiculous and wholly unfair. And PNB's tactics here are actually fascinating. The Supreme Court had already ruled in the Srinivas Prasad case that banks couldn't use a specific rule, Regulation 41, as a shield to avoid paying correct pension calculations. So, because the bank couldn't use that rule anymore, they just sidestepped the Supreme Court entirely and used this accounting practice called netting. Wait, hold on, stop right there. I don't understand what netting is.
Sure. Okay.
I'm glad to be here with you. I'm Nisha Bhattacharya, joined by my co host Priyanka Chakraborty. If you enjoy this podcast, please hit subscribe and share.
It encourages YouTube to promote and show our podcast to more retirees and relatives like you. Now, back to our main podcast item on Shri Harjit Singh's last stand.
If the Supreme Court explicitly says pay the man his correct pension commutation, how does an accounting practice becomes a get out of jail card?
Right. So, netting is basically this maneuver where instead of paying Harjit the full 138,000 rupees they owed him, the bank quietly manipulated commutation rules to bring forward a past debt that should have been deferred.
A past debt?
Yes, that he supposedly owed them from years ago. So they just cancelled out his payout behind the scenes. They enforced a backdated recovery on him.
That is shocking. It's literally like winning a lawsuit against a casino, but then when you go to cash in your chips, they claim you owe them for a drink you supposedly bought a decade ago.
Yes, quite.
And then they just subtract it from your winnings and hand you a 1000 rupee bill.
That is exactly what happened. And honestly, it gets worse.
Wait, really? How?
They didn't just withhold the money, they charged him 9% interest on that backdated recovered amount.
But he never even held that money. How can a bank charge 9% interest on a backdated recovery for money that never even reached his savings account?
I know, it makes no sense.
That sounds like phantom math. Like, is that even legal? What did the regulators say?
Well, when Harjit went to the RBI Ombudsman, the regulator simply closed the case based purely on the bank's reply.
You're kidding.
No, not kidding. They literally took PNB's word for it that it was internal dispute between an employer and an employee. The ombudsman ignored the fact that an 87-year-old retiree can't be a pensioner and an employee all at the same time. It's an illogical fallacy. It's like claiming a person who's eaten their cake still have it.
But this raises several important questions relating to corporation tax and veracity of affidavits to the Supreme Court, both of which are beyond the scope of this podcast.
Surely that backdated recovery amount, which must appear as income on PNB's financial report, is radioactive to any corporation tax official who is paying attention.
Both institutions in lockstep claim PNB had properly settled the dues. The scale of what's left unanswered here is just huge. And for you listening, Harjit's story is a stark reminder of what it looks like when we interact with these giant, faceless bureaucracies.
It really is a true wake-up call.
Institutions don't actually have to win the argument in court, they can just fight you in the ledger.
Right, turning legal defeats into accounting victory.
Exactly. And they can simply outweight a human lifespan.
They rely entirely on the biological clock rather than the letter of the law.
Yeah. So we want to leave you with this to ponder. If a massive bank can charge 9% interest on ghost money and the regulators just turn a blind eye, what happens to the rule of law when the whistleblowers simply get too old to keep fighting?
In his valedictory letter to Shri Anil Mehta, Shri Singh wrote, "I am now reconciled and at peace with the injustice done to me by the system now. I wish to seize and keep that peace to comfort me in the remaining days of my life."
That is just heartbreaking.
And then Shri Harjit Singh finished thus, "This is not the end of our journey, sir. It mustn't be. Because as long as the PNB commutation injustice endures, the fight must go on. And my dearest wish is that after all that we have been through together, I do hope that in future too, as in the past, you will continue to keep me in some corner of your mind."
Gosh, I feel like tearing up. A real valedictory closure by a resilient and brave fighter deliberately worn out by the system. A modern day David who was crushed by Goliath, the classic case of the super strong beating down on the weak.
Taking a further leaf from the Christian Bible, Shri Harjit Singh can proudly claim, "I have fought the good and worthy and noble fight. I have finished the race. I have kept the faith. The challenge is now on others to grab the baton and bring it home." Thank you for joining us on this special podcast. Please share, like, subscribe, and comment.